it's Amanda McNatt, and today I'm going to be talking about servant leadership. So, going into this assignment, I really had no idea what I wanted to talk about. And then, a few weeks ago, well, 2 weeks ago, I met up with my old youth group leader, Olivia LaBounty. She is someone I truly do think about when it comes to leadership. I'm not super religious, so during high school, I didn't have like a church or anything. And, obviously, I'm good with that because I'm not religious, but the youth group experience was something I was lacking, like someone to give advice about life and stuff. Because, my friends had talked and youth groups talked about the Bible, but that wasn't all they talked about. But then at a community center, I met Olivia, and she ran a non-religious one, and I thought that was really helpful. And, to give kids that kind of opportunity really does make me think she knows what it means to be a leader. And so when I told her about this assignment, she said this.
It has become a trend that leaders forget why they are in power and who put them there, that no matter what they are doing, they should always be putting the people first. This is something that is worldwide and has been getting worse over the past few years, that leaders forget why they are empowered they are here to do better, they are here to help people, and by putting people first, that's the only way they can get this mission accomplished.
So she had trouble sort of putting words to what she was trying to say, but she really did get the gist out there. The leadership we have isn't necessarily the leadership that is best for us. It's a leadership that is more selfish. Servant leadership is the opposite of that. Basically means that the person in power is sort of working for their followers. It's hard to wrap your head around because essentially it's a paradox. A big question in the chapter on it is actually if it's more of a trait or a behavior. A behavior is more action, and a trait is more just like part of someone's personality. And I don't know, I think it's sort of both. I don't think just anybody could be a servant leader. You have to have something within you, some selflessness about you that would allow you to put others first. And I definitely know a lot of people who could never do that. That's just not part of who they are. And I'm not saying that necessarily negatively. And a lot of it is because of trauma. I couldn't be a servant leader, I don't think. I have a lot of self-preservation instincts, That being said, it's also sort of a behavior. Just because you can be like someone who doesn't think of themselves ever doesn't necessarily mean you actually go through with the leadership aspect. Maybe you don't want to be a leader. Maybe it's just like not part of you, so you don't act on it. You don't act on these things. You're selfless for the people around you, but you're not a leader. You don't lead them. So, another question that sort of around this is have you actually met someone who's like that? And for a previous assignment a few weeks ago, I actually interviewed my older sister, Holly McNatt. She is the best person I know. She raised me, actually, which is pretty cool, in my opinion. I definitely wouldn't be where I am without her. Whenever I think of someone who does lead and does put herself last, it is her face that flashes in my mind. So, it's hard to describe exactly the essence of being a young servant leader, because she started being this way when I was probably 7, makes her around 10. And it's hard to imagine a leader around 10. but she was. So in this interview that I did, let's see, I believe it was March 28th. Anyways, during this, I asked her what was it like caring for a child when you were one yourself. To that, she had said, I mean, I had no idea what I was doing. I just knew our parents were always gone, and it was just the two of us. Further on, she said, I didn't really understand, but I was mad about what was going on. I just loved you, but no one was taking care of me, and I never got to hang out with my friends. So I focused on having fun with you and doing my best to teach you things about respect and other life lessons. And I think it's the way she says it so matter-of-factly that really lets you know it's her leadership. Because she doesn't consider herself a leader. She doesn't consider herself great. She was in charge of me. Pretty much the definition of leadership. She was my leader most of the time. If my parents were home, I guessed them, but I definitely put more importance on her words and her authority more than them, I'd say. But she just says it like it's nothing. No one was there to raise me. I couldn't be a kid. I couldn't go out with my friends. And instead of becoming an authoritarian because she was upset because of all these things, she knew that I was even younger and I couldn't have a childhood. And she didn't like that. She just wanted me, her follower, to have a better experience than she knew she would be having. So we played games and she made it seem like she wasn't that much of a leader, just told me to go to bed whenever it was too late, which, I mean, normal too late was not her too late. Her too late was, it's 11, mom and dad might be home soonish, go to bed. But the point is, a servant leader doesn't define themselves by being a servant leader, I think. I think it's taking action because you see people who need you. I don't want to say superhero, that sounds like I'm calling my sister a superhero, and I don't want her head to grow like 10 sizes, but it kind of is. It's just pure selflessness, in my opinion. So I think a big thing to talk about whenever you're talking about any type of leadership and leadership theory, as servant leadership is male versus female perspective. I think anyone can be a servant leader, but I also think that women tend to be better servant leaders because, not anything genetically really, but just because in Western society, and really most societies now, men are sort of raised to see themselves as number one. They don't necessarily always say it verbally, but all the actions going on around them. It's a man's world, you know? And so when it comes to being selfless, there's just fewer men out there than women who can really make the cut. Maggie! Sorry, my dog is eating tape. Good part of this podcast, I know. But there are much fewer men who have this sort of innate selflessness because the world's taught them to be aggressive and take what they want. Good night. And that's the opposite of what servant leadership is. Sorry about that. I don't know if you could hear me, but what I was saying while I took a bunch of tape away from my dog is that there's just fewer in number because the world teaches men to be aggressive and take what they can get, and this is masculinity. And they are out there. I would fully say Gandhi was a servant leader. They exist. It's just, if you're looking for a servant leader, you're much more likely to find that in a female than a male. That's my opinion, but I do think it does have some validity to it. And I do think also that society is changing to where women are starting to get more equal, thanks to like feminism and stuff. I wouldn't say we're close to there. There's a lot that needs to change. Maybe one day it'll be a equal percentage there, but today just isn't that day. I think women do make better servant leaders just because there's so many more of them. So a question prompted in the book is, in your mind, are there any risks associated with servant leadership? And that really is a complicated question, because there's always risk in any kind of leadership. Anything can fall because it's not strong enough or because it's not just enough, you know? I think the biggest risk with servant leadership would be that it's all about being there for others, and that involves a lot of sort of passive leadership. I think Gandhi honestly might be the best example for what I'm trying to say. He was locked up in prison for a long time because he was passive. He was a pacifist. He didn't fight. And in larger societies, that can be a big issue. Of course, with Gandhi, eventually things worked out, which was great, amazing man. But with, let's say, a nation the size of America, if we had a servant leader and they are sort of focusing on everyone else and completely neglecting, like, military, which, in my opinion, again, is a little too focused on right now. But if he totally neglected it and like national security, then we would be in big trouble. And I think that's really the only true risk. But even as I'm speaking about it, like, it is very unlikely that a servant leader would do such a thing, because part of putting people first is protecting them. And if that means having a good army, then it means having a good army. And I think the world would be a lot better if we had servant leaders in power. The only issue is authoritarian leaders can be very ruthless. And it's hard to sort of beat ruthlessness with selflessness. It's sad, but it's very true. So another question from the book is, how do servant leaders really foster self-actualization in followers? So in case you folk out there don't know what self-actualization is, it is a form of growth, is the best way to put it. Self-actualization is one becoming their best, highest self, becoming a better person, coming closer to who you were meant to be, that sort of thing. And I think servant leadership is much more likely to positively cause us to happen, but not necessarily any more likely than any other type of leadership. Let me explain. So let's say it's a terrible society. Hardship might cause you to self-actualize, to become someone who will fight for others and protect those they love. It might make you very humble and great. But with servant leadership, the big difference is it's going to be caused by being inspired. Servant leaders inspire people a lot. Another servant leader is actually Jesus. Whether or not you are a Christian, you believe in all that stuff, he was actually a man alive. We know this for sure. And he really did help people selflessly. He was a great man. And he did this without really thinking about it. And people saw that, and it amazed them that someone could be so good and so pure, and it made them better people. It's kind of a beautiful thing when you think about it, but it's just amazing how looking at someone being great can make you great. And I really think that's what it is. Like, the servant leader is obviously trying to help people physically, emotionally, whatever, but it's not their kind words that they actually say that causes them. It's the fact that they are doing these actions and words, that they are putting you before them. And you might not even know them if you meet a servant leader. But that's inspiring, that someone's so good that they would help a stranger before themselves. That's heartwarming, and it makes you really want to be a better person. And that's how they self-actualize people. Their lives do improve because they're helping them, but it's really seeing someone so good and pure that causes people to ascend to a higher self, I guess you could say. Let's see. Is it possible to practice servant leadership in a computer-mediated government? So, virtual team, I believe it could be servant leadership, though I wouldn't necessarily say it's as effective as normal servant leadership. With normal servant leadership, you are going to have a lot more one-on-one interaction. And I think, like I said before, that's really what causes people to truly better themselves. And you're not going to get that from the computer screen. You're just not. You might feel somewhat inspired, but you're not going to see it with your eyes, you know? You're not going to experience it. That being said, I do think it could be very effective in the literal sense. I think they'd make great leaders, and they'd get a lot of stuff done, and they'd help a lot of people. It's just, I think it's the self-actualization that would be lacking in that kind of situation, which isn't necessary for servant leadership. Well, I mean, it's an effect of servant leadership, but you can be a servant leader without truly, like, having people spiritually almost change. You can still help them immensely. You can change their lives. And I think it's good to keep in mind as we get further into, like, the digital age. Because, you know, maybe one day it might be our only option. And that day, I'd still take a servant leader over any kind. It's an interesting thought. Not being face-to-face with a leader, not having, like, all your leaders interact face-to-face. But it's honestly not too far off a statement, a projection. I could see it happening in the next, I don't know, 100 years or so. I really can't give you a good timeline. In my lifetime, I could see that happening. And in that case, really, leadership is leadership. Even if it's not going to be as close to home and personal, you still want someone that has your back before anything else. Well, this has been Amanda McNatt here for Servant Leadership Podcast. Sorry for the lack of my face. I was not looking too cute today. But thank you for your time, and I hope I caused you to really think about what it means to be a servant leader.